Hello, my crafty friends. It's Michelle, the Southern Shell, and I am here today to share a very rustic garland for your tree or your mantle. I am using IOD transfers for the first time, and I'll let you know what I think. And here are some of the items that I needed to start this project. So we have the IOD transfers, the thick twine, the fabric pieces, the wicker stars, the bottle brush trees, the wooden lights, wooden beads, chalk paint, gold paint, Mod Podge, and wax sealer. Let's get started. So I did get these lights off of, I believe this was off of Temu, and this is a couple packages. They weren't very expensive. I waited until I could get everything on like a 90% off sale, and I got them that way. The IOD transfers. And what I want to do is, I was thinking I was going to be using 10 of these lights. I didn't use 10. I ended up using 8 because the IOD transfers were actually a little bigger than I anticipated. So I was only able to find like 8 of the ones I liked that were small enough to go on these lights. You can see me here looking through the book. Aren't these images gorgeous? Now the snowflakes and the stars would fit great on there, but these others are just large. They're absolutely gorgeous. But I told you guys before, the transfers that I've used in the past just look like stickers, that I've stuck stickers on them, and I just wasn't impressed. So I was able to splurge a little bit, and I got my first IOD transfer book. I will leave her link in the description box below. She is really close to me, and that's wonderful. She's only about 45 minutes from where I live. I did decide I wanted to use these stockings, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stocking on each one of those lights. And then I'm going to pick some stars and some snowflakes to go on there as well. So those are the ones I'm picking at the top there. And I needed to pull that page out in order to cut them properly and not, not lose anything or not cut too close to the other images. Now I'm making these double-sided because you never know how it's going to hang on your garland, or if it gets twisted, or if you have animals that bump the tree or children. So I wanted to make sure that these ornaments on the garland were going to be double-sided. And so here I'm just picking out enough stars and enough snowflakes that I have for each of these. So that's going to be 8 lights, and there's 8 stockings, and so I wanted to make sure I had 8 snowflakes and stars. So that was just 4 of each. And so I'm just making sure I get them all cut out properly without losing any of my other images here. And it was really easy. These, the grid lines on here were amazing. And I will tell you that you get what you pay for, and I am tickled with these IOD transfers. I can't wait to try more of their products. So the first thing I'm going to do with these little wooden Christmas lights is I'm going to put a nice coat of my chalk plaster paint on here. My plaster chalk paint? There we go, my plaster chalk paint on here. I want to try to keep the edges clean, and there we go. Look how clean that is. No, but I do want to go all over these and give a nice base for the transfers to go onto. I'm going to try to clean that edge off a little bit, and then go ahead and finish up here. Now, once these are done on one side and dry, I will flip them over and do a second coat on the other side. First coat is done on the front side or back side, just on one side. First coat is done. So I'm going to hit it with my heat gun here so I can make sure it's all nice and dry before I flip it over, because I don't want it to stick to that parchment paper on the other side. So there's a little spot that just got messed up a bit. I'm just going to dab on there with my paintbrush and then hit it once again with my heat gun. And here we go, flipping them over to the other side. Since it's uniform, it does not matter. This is the same shape on both sides. It's not like you have arms sticking out on one direction where you have to be careful which way you're going. So I'm just doing the same thing. Once again, a nice coat of my chalk plaster paint, and we're going to let these dry. Okay, so now it's time to put down my transfers. I have used them in the past, like I have shared before. I've used them on different projects, on wood projects, on resin projects, and every time I use them, the edges are just not right up close, and it tends to leave a glossy presence on these. And so I've not been real thrilled with the way that rub-on transfers are actually looking on some of my projects. But I wanted to go ahead and try the IOD because they have received just rave reviews on how these work. And so I thought I would try it with the IOD product, and we will see how I like that. So I just took the backing off of the IOD transfer, and the image is stuck to the front where the grid lines are. I laid it down on my light, and I just started pushing that on there. It was so easy, and there's no gloss, absolutely no shine on that at all. I am so far so happy with the way these look. Now I'm doing it in my hand because my camera is actually mounted onto something on my table. So if I try to rub it while it's sitting on my table, it tends to shake a lot. So I'm trying to do this without shaking the camera too much, making you guys dizzy. So I'm just laying it on there, pressing it down with my thumb, and this going on over with my little tool here that came with the book for the IODs. Now this one's, I needed a little bit more pressure, but look at that. Oh my goodness, I'm just so tickled. So I'm just going to continue along here. I'm going to lay each one down, and then I'm going to just burnish it onto that painted light. That chalk paint makes it nice and textured so that I don't have to worry too much about how that transfer is going to grab onto that, that textured light bulb. And it just sits right on in there. You want to make sure you've got it burnished all the way down, all the way around. And once you do that, that top just lifts off of there so stinking easy. And the same goes for the snowflakes. The snowflakes have more thinner ends and stuff. And I'm going to tell you, there is no edge on these transfers. If you buy some rub-on transfers like off of Amazon, or you get some at Walmart or whatever, you have an edge all the way around this. They've not cut up close to that image. These are cut close to that image. You do not see anything other than your transfer on there. And then you just burnish it down. You can take the back side of that top transfer and rub it down, burnish it, or use your fingers. You see me going over it with my fingers here. And I'm turning it right on over because now I'm going to do the stockings. The first thing I need to do with these is actually cut them into 8 individual stockings. So I'm going to come right down on that grid line or close to it, and I'm going to just cut right on down so I kind of have a middle point between each of those stockings. I'm going to come up from the bottom and do a little curved cut because the stocking foot is a little curved, and I'm going to pull it right on up into the top of that mantle and the garland that the stockings are hanging on. I'm trying to make sure that the lights that are actually on the top of that mantle are not cut in half, they're not, that you're going to be able to see anything that's actually on that mantle that those stockings are attached to. And look how easy it is to use those grid lines, making sure that the lines are going top to bottom and side to side and nice and level. Set it down, burnish it down on top of that light, and look at how beautiful that is. That plaster color is perfect. It's not a bright white. It sits nicely next to those stockings. So I'm just going to continue making sure that these grid lines are right where they need to be. I want to keep one light bulb down there so that as I'm laying it across, that those grid lines are going to be even, so that that mantle going across each light, they're all going to be placed in the same general vicinity on those light bulbs. And then I'm just going to burnish it down, and you can see here that these are taking a little bit more pressure than those stars and those snowflakes did. But I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Look at how beautiful that is. That looks as if it's been painted on there. It's absolutely gorgeous. Here you can see me burnishing it on my table, and since my camera is attached, you can see how it's bouncing around. That's why I'm trying to do it in my hand. However, these are taking a little more pressure to do. So when you are burnishing these down, you can actually see the difference of the transfer of one that is burnished and one that is not, because you can tell when it has lifted up. See how dull that one is? It just lifts right up. And this one is still shiny, so it looks like it's actually attached still. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and get our Tim Holtz Distressed Oxide in Vintage Photo, and we're going to go right around the edges of this, because the starkness of those edges to the rusticness of those stockings and stars just doesn't quite blend for me. So I went ahead and got out my little dauber, and I'm going around each side of these ornaments. First of all, you don't want to do just one, you're going to do both sides and use that Distressed Oxide. I'm coming back in with the black soot and going just on the edge. Now the Distressed Vintage Photo did fine on the edge, but I wanted it to be a little more, a little darker on there, and so I went ahead and pulled in that black soot, and that actually helps with those stocking images, whereas the Vintage Photo really ties in to those stars and those snowflakes. But I think this helps a lot with the colors that we're using here. So now I'm bringing in that gold paint. I wanted a little bit of sparkle on here. They are ornaments after all. So I'm just going to actually paint over the tops of our hangers for these light bulb ornaments. And it's going to take 2 coats to be on here, because this is actually it's translucent, and it just does not give a good thick coverage like a chalk paint does. So you do need to put a couple coats on here. So you see I'm just drawing along the base of that topper and along the top of that bulb to get that done. I do hit this with my heat gun just a little bit, because I didn't want to damage those transfers. I did want to add a little bit more gold throughout there so it doesn't look so flat in the back. So I'm just taking my big brush there, putting a little bit on the edge, patting it off to the side, and then plunking, I guess that would be a good word for it, right across the tops of those images. So there you have it. Now I'm going to lay them right on out, and I'm going to get ready to put the wax on these. So you need to put a sealer on top of this. So I am using my Folk Art clear wax, and I've got some in that lid there, and I'm using a cloth, and I'm just going over the top of that, and making sure it's all covered nicely. And then I'm going to just make sure that each of them have an even coat across here. And then I'll do the same to the back side. Now I can see now that you can see the edges of the transfer, but that's only because that light is actually shining on that one up in that top corner. And it's once I get this all on there and then buffed out, you're not going to have that same type of issue. I'm just going to hit this with my heat gun just briefly, and once that is pretty much dry, it's just a wax, I'm going to come back in and just buff it out. Now you can see that top one where we could actually see the outline. You cannot tell one little bit that that is a rub-on transfer. And I'm just doing it all with all of these light ornaments, and then I will flip it over and we will do the same thing on the other side. Now, as those are drying, I'm going to get the rest of my embellishments out and ready. You see there I have some natural bottle brush looking trees. I have some natural toned wicker stars, and I have some twine. This is your regular size twine that we've used throughout many things as crafters, and I'm cutting them about 6 inches, and those are going to go through the light bulbs themselves, and I'm going to use that to tie them onto the garland. First thing I'm going to do is loop it through that hole, and I'm going to tie a knot on the top of that ornament, but I'm going to put a little dab of glue right there before I tighten that ornament with the string. I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to put twine on each of these light ornaments so I can hang them on the garland string. Once again, just tie it into a knot, putting a dab of glue between those strings before you tie that knot tight. So we're going to go ahead and start on these bottle brush trees. These are 2.5 inches, and they are in the natural color with a little bit of snow on them. I am going to use wire to attach these to the garland string. I'm going to use 8 of these and 6 inches of wire for each tree. The reason I'm using the wire is because that will tie up nicely against the wire that the bottle brush tree is created on. So once I cut this 18 gauge wire, I'm going to make sure I have 8 pieces, 1 for each tree. I'm going to find the center piece of that wire, and I'm going to loop it around the top of that tree. I want to make sure I have a little space there that I can twist around and not lose this bottle brush tree, or that this wire is not going to slide off of it. And so there, now you have it. Just a little wire attached to each one of those trees so that I can now hook it onto the twine that the garland's going to be. Once again, you can see here, just wrap it around, make sure it's in the center, and it's going to be nice and tight around that wire that those bottle brush pieces are actually twisted onto. Use a pair of pliers to grab and twist it around so you've got a nice tight twist on there, and then you can fold that wire up, and now you have all those nice pieces of tree ready to go. So this twine I got at Walmart. It's been in my stash for quite some time. I have actually crocheted this and made other garlands out of it, and turned out adorable. So I needed to cut down my fabric here, and I found this red plaid. It frays a lot, so it does not tear very well. So what I did is I first cut it right about a 1/2 inch all the way down, but it ended up being a 1/4 inch. So the twine I used for the base of my garland is this twine I got from Walmart. It's been in my stash for a very long time. I've used it on multiple projects, and I still have a lot left. I went ahead and measured out 15 feet here on my tabletop mat, and once I got that, I knew I'd have plenty of room to start my garland. So on the twine, once it was cut, I went ahead and put some hot glue on the end of it, used my fingers, and then pressed it in so that twine would not unravel and start fraying on me. I went ahead and measured out about 6 inches, folded it in half across that top, and tied a knot in the end to give you a looping end there that you can hook on a hook or on a branch or wherever you want to start it. Went ahead and put a dab of hot glue in there before I pulled that taut and tight. And this is where I'm going to start with my pattern. I'm going to measure out 6 inches, and I'm going to tie just a little loop knot right there, and that is going to give me a base that I can put a bead on the other end of my twine, and it won't slide past that knotted area. Here we go, slide it all the way down, and it's just big enough. It's not overwhelming, it's just big enough to stop that bead. And then I'm going to tie another one on the other side of that bead so it stays right in that place. And there we have it. Pull it nice and tight, pressing that knot right up against your bead. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure out another 3 inches, and each of my pieces now are going to be 3 inches apart. So I'm going to cut some twine here, and I'm going to use that to actually tie on those wicker stars. There's 3 different colors here, so I'm going to have each color in a pattern. I'm going to start with the lightest, and then the medium, and then the dark as I go through this pattern on the larger twine to create this garland. I tied a little knot in the top of that so that now that star is going to dangle once I get it attached to that thicker twine. Dab a little hot glue right in there, and then tie that in a knot and gluing it on top of that twine, that thicker twine. And then it's not going to go anywhere. You've got it, and it's stationary on that twine. Once again, now I'm going to measure out 3 inches, and I'm going to hang a tree. Now that wire is all measured up, and so I'm going to make sure I have enough room on that wire, stick it on there, and twist it closed. I can use my pliers again, that way I'm not hurting my fingers any. And I'm going to use my wire clippers here. Those are the heavy duty ones, and then I'm going to use those pliers to roll that tip right around and into itself so there won't be any sharp edges from that tree. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure another 3 inches, and this is one that I didn't have up front, was the berries and the pine cones. I took 3 of those berries and I twisted them together. I'm going to measure out 3 inches, and I'm going to twist it once again around that twine. I am going to glue it right on down there, and I'm going to use my pliers once again to make sure that wire is nice and tight on that twine. You're going to want to trim off any excess wire and make sure that it's nice and smooth so there's no pokies for you. Now I have some little tiny pine cones, and this is I think I got these from my daughter's yard. I had ordered some years and years ago, but then my daughter and son-in-law moved into a house that had lots of trees around that dropped these little tiny pine cones. So I've been gathering them for a few years now. I love them. I'm just going to glue those onto the twine right across the top of those berries. And that area is now done. So now we have the one piece that we created with our transfers. I'm going to measure once again 3 inches, take that twine that we had already put on that light bulb, and get ready to tie a little knot around with some glue to attach that ornament onto our twine. Look at there. Now we've got our first set all ready to go. So now I'm going to come back in and create another little knot so I can slide on another bead, and it won't move any closer to that light bulb ornament. Just like I did on the first bead, I tied a little loop, strung the end of that twine through, created a little ring there, and then tightened up that knot right on that 3-inch mark, threaded my bead, and then I'm going to pull it down, and I'm going to create another knot on the other side of that bead, you see here a loop, take my twine, thread it through, start pulling it close to that bead, and then you're going to pop some hot glue in there, and then continue pulling that until that knot is nice and tight. And now we can start on the pattern to finish this garland. And this is when I looked up and realized I forgot to add my fabric on there. So looking at this, I was like, okay, put it on the star or on the tree. Okay, let's put it on the tree, and it's too thick, it's too long. So I went ahead and I attached it, and I just wasn't liking the way it looked. It was overwhelming for that tree. So I trimmed it off. It was still a little thick, and so I went ahead and thought I would try to like fringe it. That did not work at all. Look at how frayy that is. It just pulled that right on off. So I just trimmed it up, and before I added any others on, I went ahead and cut them all in half, and then I trimmed it out. And here it is, all done. Very simple. Now you can do more with this if you want to. I have a piece of 9-foot garland that I might wrap this onto and then put it across the front of our entertainment center here. We do not have a fireplace, so I have to get creative. It might look great on our tree. I have no doubt that it would look great on the tree. So we will see what I come up with from here on out. I also thought about putting maybe some twinkle lights on it. So I don't know yet what I'll do with our Christmas decoration here. Let me know what you think, and if you plan on making something simple like this to decorate your home with. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I do appreciate you spending time with me. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I do hope you consider doing so now by hitting that subscribe button. If you want to know when I've uploaded a new video, hit that bell notification. YouTube should notify you when my latest video has gone live. As always, stay safe, God bless, and bye for now.